The Phoenix Suns were 12-8, Mitch, after beating the San Antonio Spurs on December 3rd. That is when a incredibly favorable position in the schedule began to occur. They played against a team like New Orleans, who was mostly shorthanded at that point and was going through a terrible stretch. They played against Orlando, who was extremely shorthanded. They played against teams like Dallas and Memphis, who were without a bunch of guys. They went through a very meh stretch of the schedule in general, where the competition was underwhelming, to say the least, and it was their time to move back up the standings, essentially. Stop fluttering around 500, get 8, 10, 12 games above 500, so you don't have to sweat the play-in. They went 10-13 over that stretch, and they're a game over 500, and now they are entering what is right now deemed as the most difficult schedule the rest of the way. It is difficult to find optimism with this team for a few different reasons, Mitch, and one of the top ones right now is just the path that they're facing over the next 3 months to try and lock in a playoff spot.
They have 39 games left, and for those that are not sure what we're referring to, there's a great website that we used to use in the past when it comes to the Phoenix Suns called
Might be using it in the future really soon.
Tankathon.com, but we're not using it for what you think. We're not curious about draft positioning. They have a nice little tab in the NBA section called Remaining Schedule Strength, and believe it or not, the Phoenix Suns are facing the toughest strength of schedule down the stretch based on opponents' remaining win percentage. The win percentage remaining of the opponents of the Suns is at about 53%, which, yikes. In that stretch, just to name a few that stand out, Oklahoma City, then you got Utah, but then the next night you got Denver, then you have Memphis, and then you go on the road to face Houston, San Antonio, Chicago, Toronto, Memphis. That's a long road trip. Back-to-back at home against the Pelicans,
who are playing much better basketball now that they're completely healthy again.
And you've already lost 2 once this year, then Minnesota, then the Clippers again, and then a road trip to face the Nuggets, the Mavericks, the Grizzlies, the Rockets. The point is, I could go on. I will emphasize that the teams that the Suns are facing down the stretch of the way, they are the teams that the Suns need to beat if they want to be taken seriously. And I have zero optimism at this exact moment in time that they're going to prove to me that they can beat any of these teams coming forward.
So that area you ran down is to March 12th against Houston, which, like, I'm just going to eyeball this and say that's game like 67, game 70, somewhere sort of in there. And then in the last 3 weeks of the season, you have got Cleveland, Milwaukee, Boston, Minnesota, Houston, Milwaukee, Boston, New York, Golden State, Oklahoma City, San Antonio, and Sacramento. Those are all teams that expect to be in a play-in spot at the very least, and also some of the best teams in the league, like getting Boston twice, like getting the Knicks. Houston's one of the best teams in the West right now. You can go on and on. OKC is in there, of course, as well. So now in terms of how I was saying, I broke off the schedule at the start and just kind of looking at, okay, over these 20-plus games here, where can you sort of not catch up, but further extend yourself away from this play-in mix? Instead, they're firmly in it. And now I'm going to sort of look at those really 2 points. So, like, by mid-March, are you still in it? That's what I'm looking at, because that is where this gets particularly brutal. And then if you're still in it, can you close out for those last 12 games of the year against, again, brutal competition? Now, what's working in the Suns' favor right now is what's happening in the standings. Your Denver Nuggets, Mitch. My goodness me. They are up to 27-16. They're 8-2 in their last 10. Essentially what had occurred over the first month and a half of the year was OKC top dogs, and then Houston and Memphis were off to these amazing starts. They have more or less held up their end of the bargain there by continuing that, but the only team to really find itself out of the sludge a bit and extend themselves away like we wanted to see the Suns do is Denver. The good news is no one else has really done it. Maybe the Lakers, if you want to throw them in there, they're 23-18. The Clippers are 24-19. The Kings are the one team that's gotten really hot. They're 23-20. And then teams like the Timberwolves, Mavericks, and Warriors, and the Spurs as well are fluttering around either a game or two over or under 500. So the opportunity and the gap is there. Like, you could be in this situation where you're in the East right now. Chicago is only 4 games out of the 6th seed, but they're way further back of teams like at the 4 and the 3, where it's really just only a few teams you're really competing with here.
I mean, if we're going to play optimist here for a second, which is totally justified, the teams that you're playing are all ahead of you, which means if you beat them, and you beat enough of them, you're eventually going to surpass them and find yourself higher up in the standings and in a similar spot to where you were a year ago. Because like we said, they're going to be playing Dallas a couple of times, Minnesota a couple of times. I know they end the season with Sacramento, so you've at least got one more there. A couple against the Clippers still to go, a couple against the Nuggets, a couple against the Grizzlies, the Rockets. What worries me is what's also left is the top dogs in the East who you have yet to face this year. Cleveland one more time. You got a couple with Boston. You got a couple with the Knicks. You got a couple with the Bucks. That could easily turn into just 7 losses right there, especially because you don't get to see them as much. At that point in time, the East will kind of separated itself into the top dogs, and right now they are the top dogs as we're seeing them. And in particular, Milwaukee's played really well as of late. The Knicks have found some really good chemistry with their new look lineup. And then, of course, Boston and Cleveland has just been the absolute juggernauts that we didn't expect it out of Cleveland. Did expect it out of Boston. But you've already gotten a taste of Cleveland, and that didn't go so well when you were already fully healthy. So I'm more worried about the teams in the East than I am in the West, because it feels like the parity is still existent enough for them to be able to take some sort of advantage there. They have beaten Dallas twice already, so they've got that going for them at least.
I think so. I'll just put it bluntly. With what you've seen this year, do you think they're capable of being within reach of a playoff spot with a couple weeks to go? Or do you think that they're firmly going to land in the play-in now because of this?
I'll reply just as bluntly. No, I don't think this team is at the same caliber of the teams ahead of them. I just don't.
I tend to agree. I cannot find reasons to believe in this team right now. I will say, with the way in which they've been able to win games at the very least, that's what I'll say. Now they're winning games.
Yeah.
My belief in them, see, that's the thing, is like this is a difficult conversation to have, because a lot of the reason why I've been down on the team this year is because we have championship expectations for them, rightfully so. It's why you did all you did, yada, yada, yada. We're not talking about that right now. We're just talking about, can you do enough to get in the play? And remember, 35-18 to finish the year last year, and a lot of the play that we've seen this year was still inside of those games, and yet they were still able to go 17 games over 500 for a majority of the season. So as much as I can look at this schedule and think that it's daunting, they have shown an ability to put together wins right now, and they're going to need to very quickly. I think that, to your point, and like the teams that are around you, 3 great litmus test games coming up. Monday against the Clippers, Wednesday against the Timberwolves, then a week from Friday against the Warriors. Those are 3 teams firmly around your range right now. And what we've seen is when the Suns play against the worst in the league, they look like their fellow worst in the league. And that is a debate that you and I have had over the course of the season. Is this playing down to your competition? Is this not taking those teams seriously? Or are you just truly that inconsistent where you are going to struggle against whoever you play? I tend to believe that's just what it is, but we'll see if the increase in competition gets them in a position where they can at least start winning games. I'm not sitting here saying I believe they're going to make the playoffs and then win the championship. I just believe that they do still have quite an opportunity, and quite a good opportunity still, to hit a top 6 spot.